for all kinds of general mentoring where one size fits all framework has come into place. Career counseling will hereafter, I believe, will see more customization in which the students' specific needs, goals, aspirations are going to be brought to bear in deciding. And it cannot be something that can be done just before high school, 12th standard or something like that. It has to start much early. It should be integrated into the school curriculum. It should be integrated into the school programmatic structure. It should become part of a mentoring role from day one. So in many ways, what ends up happening in schools today is it's not really career counseling. It ends up becoming college admissions. College admissions is not career counseling. So we need to first make a very important distinction between what typically teachers and counselors end up doing is they are only focusing on college counseling. And I must say, and I hope you are not like that, but there's a lot of dubiousness that has come into the career counseling space. You have counselors writing statements of purpose and personal statements, cooked up CVs, creating, in many ways, creating a make-believe world of a person who is really not the case. And I must say that universities, increasingly both in India and abroad, are becoming more and more aware of these things. And this is not going to be in the best interest of the students, and of course their parents, and also the career counselors. So in a way, customization of career counseling services is going to be a very major trend. That's a second. The third, something that the pandemic has forced us to do, which is that career counseling historically has been for universities abroad. And I'm very happy that CIALFO is not confining its approach and imagination for students to go abroad. There is a very strong emerging trend that more and more bright young students in India are going to look at Indian universities. And both some of the leading public and private universities are going to attract some of the best and the finest young minds to study in India and stay in India when it comes to undergraduate programs. This means that the career counseling space cannot be confined to the world universities, but also the Indian universities. So this India and the world trend of career counseling is going to become even more stronger. And when it comes to undergraduate spaces, I strongly believe that this is going to develop a robust framework of how to mentor students when it comes to pursuing undergrad education in India. The fourth trend that I am going to see in the career counseling space is continuous engagement beyond college admissions. In a way, the unfortunate part of the career counseling space that we have seen is that the counselor's job ends when the student gets admission into a college. That's not, unfortunately, career counseling. As I said, we need to make a distinction between college admissions and career counseling. Career counseling is a continuous effort to mentor students for their future, prepare them for careers. And in many ways, that is a bigger responsibility, and more people are going to seek that when it comes to what the career counselors can do. So career counseling beyond college admissions is going to be something that we need to keep in mind for the future. And the last aspect of the emerging trend in career counseling, in my view, is counseling for careers that don't exist. In fact, this is something which we knew that it was already happening, but today, more than ever before, that we are going to both educating young people and counseling young people for careers that don't exist. Just imagine for a moment, you're going to counsel people, young people, for careers that don't exist now, but will emerge in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So then the entire approach to career counseling will have to change. You are actually looking for skill sets and approaches, including critical thinking abilities, analytical abilities, ability to understand and appreciate diversity and plurality in their thinking. All these are going to become much more important. In fact, one of the things that will become more important as a part of this effort is how do you pursue continuous learning opportunities, and I'm going to come back to it in a minute. So, in summary, The emerging trends in career counseling are five, in my view. One, knowledge and research-based counseling. Second, customization of counseling. Third, India and the world. Fourth, continuous engagement beyond college degrees. And fifth, counseling for careers that don't exist. All of this is going to happen in the context of democratization of career counseling services. It will simply not only be for the rich and the privileged and the few. All right, let me quickly move to the next big thing I want to talk about. A very, very small sort of a masterclass on the national education policy. A lot has been talked about it. As you know, 29th July 2020, the Government of India released the national education policy. And then on 29th July 2021, we celebrated the first anniversary of national education policy. And then on 29th July 2022, we'll be celebrating the second anniversary of the national education policy. Now, of course, you can see the tone itself. What I really mean is that we have a lot to do. While I am somebody who has welcomed the national education policy in very strong terms, I've written probably 10 articles on it across major Indian newspapers, but I do believe that we have a lot to do, but that's a separate conversation, and I'm happy to share with you how to implement and things like that. But what I'm going to do is, since several of you may or may not be fully familiar with what the NEP has done, is first I want to say the NEP is a transformative document. It's a transformative vision. It has reimagined the future of education. Never before in the history of India, including since the first NEP and many other such efforts, a document, a policy paper published by a government has received so much of attention, and most importantly, such amazing degree of political and social and intellectual consensus. Academics are very comfortable to differ and disagree and dissent. But the remarkable thing about the national education policy was that beyond, barring a few areas where one can quibble about the NEP simply could not receive any strong resistance from the left or the center or the right in the political spectrum. That shows how extraordinary the national education policy is. So what is it? First, in terms of higher education, it has envisaged the idea of world-class education, world-class universities, and the need for promoting excellence. Historically, our focus has been a lot on promoting access and inclusion. That's not abandoned, but we are, for the first time in recent memory, talked about the idea of world-class education. Why not? Well, 3,000 years ago, we had Nalanda and Takshashila and Vallabhi and Vikramshila, and Indian civilization and heritage had played a leadership role in educating people around the world. Can you believe my alma mater, Oxford University, is 800 years old? Bologna, which is older than Oxford in Italy, is 900 years old. But Nalanda, Takshashila, Vallabhi, and Vikramshila is over 2,000 years ago. And Takshashila and Nalanda had over 10,000 students and faculty and staff, including people from different parts of the world. So when we had such historical and civilizational heritage and leadership that provided to the world, both the pre-independent India and the post-independent India saw significant decline in higher education, and we want to retrace that steps, and that's what the national education policy has done. That's the first, world-class education. Second, the multidisciplinary education and liberal education we had talked about. In fact, most of us, I studied in Loyola College Madras, and I did BCom, and then if you do BCom, you end up doing almost all of commerce. You do BSc Chemistry, BSc Botany, BSc Zoology, BA Political Science, BA History, BA Literature. The bracketing of the Indian education system resulted in significant lack of innovation and, most importantly, appreciation of wider disciplines. Today, the national education policy has talked about multidisciplinary universities and interdisciplinary education. This augurs well for the future of education, and this means that teachers and schools and principals are also put on notice so that they start that work early on. The third aspect is expansion with quality and also equity. So in many ways, we have now something like 1,000 universities, 50,000 colleges. The gross enrollment ratio in India is approximately 26 to 28%. We need to get to at least 40 to 50%, which means we need to expand and have more universities. But when we mindlessly expand and do more universities, we end up compromising on quality. So the NEP has recognized the need for expansion, but also talked about quality. That's the third aspect. The fourth aspect is NEPS front on talked about regulatory reforms. It talked about the need for regulatory reforms, the need for regulatory bodies to reform themselves, the need for regulations to appreciate the importance of innovation and other forms of initiatives that education institutions promote. I don't have time to go at length with this. The fifth is research ecosystem. It talked about a GDP investment increase in research. It has talked about the need for a research foundation where resources will be provided for research. It has also talked about research becoming a most important aspect for the future evaluation of universities as well. The sixth focus of the NEP is about faculty. It has talked about recruiting, retention, and also faculty development programs. How do we ensure that some of the bright people come into education? Let me tell you, this is one of the most important challenges of higher education. In the last 12 years, I have given over 12,000 talks across India, in schools in particular, but also in colleges. And almost everywhere I go, even in the city of Bengaluru, I ask the school students whom I'm talking to, how many of you would like to become teachers? How many of you would like to be part of a school or a college as a teacher or a faculty? The answer is nil. At best, less than 1% somewhere. So we are increasingly creating a situation where some of the brightest kids who come out of our schools are entering into every other profession excepting teaching. And I dare say some of the most mediocre people who simply couldn't get any other job and have nothing better to do in life have ended up becoming teachers and in both schools, colleges, and of course universities. So this is a very disturbing trend that I have seen it in the last decade, and what the NEP is trying to do, and it's going to be much more difficult, is having a sharper focus on faculty. That's the sixth aspect of it. The seventh is something that we know, governance and leadership. In fact, if the pandemic has taught us one thing is, if you look at schools, colleges, universities, which have been able to overcome some of these challenges, it has a close correlation to good governance and leadership demonstrated within these institutions. 8 is about academic freedom and institutional autonomy, something that the NEP has recognized that universities should be, and colleges and academic institutions should have the academic freedom, faculty should have the academic freedom, and also institutions should have the flexibility and freedom to operate. The ninth aspect is about public funding and private philanthropy. Listen, there is a very strong recognition, and I don't know whether you know this, but right now in India, 70% of Indian higher education institutions are private sector, and 70% of students studying in Indian higher education are in private sector. This has been a tectonic shift in the higher education sector. Never before since independence we had the situation where both in terms of the number of students studying in Indian higher education and the number of institutions which are offering higher education, the private sector is dominating. I'm not saying it's a good thing. The state has slowly abdicated its responsibility when it comes to higher education, and the private sector has acquired the space. Unfortunately, there are far too many dubious, mediocre, for-profit, and even poor quality institutions spread across, which has brought a lot of disrepute to the private higher education. But that trend can be fixed only if we can emphasize on both public funding but also private philanthropy. And the last aspect which the NEP talks about, very quickly I'll say, is internationalization, accreditation, and digitization. A strong emphasis is given to all these three trends about how we can see the future of the education. All right, let me move to the last part of it, which is about the future of jobs. All right, so what's the future of jobs and the trends? First, I strongly believe that the future of jobs is going to be based upon a lot more flexibility and freedom in pursuing diverse career trajectories. If you have time, Google at some point of time the word great resignation. When you look at this great resignation, in an alarming number of people, young people across the country, in India and around the world, have resigned during the pandemic. And not because they got other jobs, but they simply have decided to do other things in life. Pandemic has created a new type of mindset among people when it comes to how they want to live their lives. And if this trend that we have seen during the pandemic, if it's not taken into account by educators, by professionals, by organizations, by institutions, we are going to see a much less accomplished institution in the future. So, flexibility and freedom in pursuing diverse career trajectories. Second, continuous learning and professional development. Gone are the days when your academic qualifications that you get at the time of entry into jobs is going to take you through across your career pursuit. You will be challenged and constantly so. And that challenge will have to be met by your ability to pursue continuous learning opportunities, improving your own methods and approaches towards pursuing your jobs, and relearning, unlearning, and reimagining. Now, we know that the medical profession, particularly in the Western world, but also in other parts of the world, is very much wedded to this idea because new trends are emerging and we need to be updated. But barring the medical world, including the legal world where I am part of, and other worlds, we simply don't take this seriously. And now the situation demands that we're going to see a lot more emphasis on continuous learning and professional development. Third, the most important part of the future, I believe, is a new form of KRA. The KRAs that you are all used to is key research, key result areas. But the new form of KRA that I believe is going to be valued is employees is about K as in knowledge, R as in resilience, and A as in adaptability. Knowledge, resilience, and adaptability is going to be the future KRA for the workplace. Employees will be constantly pushing their boundaries when it comes to assessing their performance, and that is going to be based upon this KRA that I believe is going to be very significant. Fourth, we are going to see the movement of work from home to work from anywhere. More and more people are going to recognize that the futility of large office spaces and the necessity for people to come and physically be there. Now, the IT sector did set the trend almost 2 decades ago, but I think more and more people in other professions